In the previous videos, we've been looking at these concepts of displacement, velocity, and acceleration, and how these concepts describe movement, and also how they relate to when a force is applied to a body. But we've been considering these concepts of displacement, velocity, and acceleration in a linear fashion. Linear meaning we've been looking at it in straight lines. So where the dancer moves straight up and down during a leap or moves horizontally along the stage. They're all linear terms. In this video, we're going to look at this concept of angular motion, so rotations. And believe it or not, but these concepts of displacement and velocity and acceleration all directly apply to the concept of angular motion. They just translate directly across. So we can have angular displacement, velocity, and acceleration, just like we can have linear displacement, velocity, and acceleration. And all that you'll see we really do is change the measure of space from a straight line, from a linear measure into an angular measure. So this concept of angular motion is really important for dance for two reasons. First of all, as you can tell by the picture here on the right hand side, that the way our muscles produce movement within our body, the outcome of that movement is typically angular. So our muscles produce a force, it applies to our bones, and it produces angular motion. The second thing that dancers do all the time that is angular is, of course, they spin their bodies, and that is an angular motion itself. So for example, if we have a bird's eye view and we can see a dancer's head here and we're looking down from the roof, and maybe this is like stage front here, and so the dancer is facing out towards the front of the stage, and then they perform like a half turn motion. Okay, so they've turned around, and now that they are facing the back of the stage, hopefully you can appreciate that that is referred to as turning 180 degrees. Okay, so this concept of degrees is in fact the measure of distance. That is an angular measure of distance. It's measuring the amount of rotation that is being performed. And if we throw a direction on here, which in this case is clockwise, then we have a distance, we have movement through space, we have a direction, and so therefore this 180 degrees clockwise means we have an angular displacement happening. Then if we measure the amount of time that took, then we can divide the displacement by time, then we have a measure of velocity. If we look at that time again, then we have a measure of angular acceleration. So the same principles, the same formulas apply for angular motion as it does for linear motion. So let's have a look at that example now across with our muscles here, and to see how we describe movement of joints as angular. So we define a joint center here as being in the elbow, and here we have the humerus and the radius and ulna, which make up the forearms. So hopefully you can appreciate that by me drawing those two lines through the bones here, it doesn't look that dissimilar to our two arms here moving around the head, or the two directions that our dancer was facing in. So that movement there of a half circle being 180 degrees can be applied here to the joint. So if we look at, well, what would be the angular distance between those 2 points? And if you eyeball it, I would say, well, it's probably about 75 degrees. Then if our elbow extends, so this movement here, it extends, And now we've got our elbow, we've got our humerus and forearm. And let's say that this is, wow, it looks like about 115 degrees. Then we've got, all of a sudden, 40 degrees of extension. So we have an angular displacement. If we measure the time that it took to go from 75 down to 115, then we can calculate velocity, and then we can also calculate acceleration if we have another factor of time. So you can hopefully see that these concepts apply directly across into angular motion just as they do into linear motion. And in the other dance knowledge courses, I'll refer to these concepts all the time because they are a really good way of describing human movement. And that's, of course, essential if I'm going to describe biomechanics. So these concepts of displacement, velocity, and acceleration are really important to establish in your mind what it is that they mean, because they are essential if we're going to describe the movement that dancers perform when they are dancing.